I want to kind of go to transition a little bit into your chapter on cancer in the book. The chapter's incredible. It's called Beyond Gene Mutation. And you open up with the history of when Richard Nixon signed the National Cancer Act in 1971, which allocated $1.4 billion at the time to fight the war on cancer, right? Can
Right.
you speak a little bit to the disastrous results of that so-called war that we've been experiencing for a number of decades now, and how in the last 50 years since then, and billions of dollars later, right, that 1.4 billion has turned into many, many more billions. How our scientific, pharmacological, medical approach to cancer has not really reduced cancer diagnoses or deaths, and in fact may have contributed towards its proliferation.
Mm. So I think people probably need to understand more about the history of how we came up with the so-called mutational view of cancer's origin, which is this concept, right, that there's this nucleus within all our cells, and it's like a ticking time bomb. There are these mutations that we were just born with because, the universe is based on really fundamentally chaotic and nihilistic principles, and life kind of sucks, and it's just a matter of time before you go. And it has nothing to do with the environment, none of the chemicals. You could have smoked for decades, and it's, yes, now we know there's a genetic link with smoking, et cetera. But back then the idea was, it was actually, believe it or not, the idea was to cover up the known environmental causes of illness with the idea of something equivalent to a germ, which is what the gene-based view of disease was a twin of, which was that, again, the genes are responsible, not what you do to the cell, not the fact that the tobacco industry, for example, funded a lot of the original genome research into cancer because they were trying to distract from the reality, which is they already knew that smoking caused cancer. So
Right.
instead of, right, the smoking gun, literally, not just a metaphor, the smoking gun, they wanted people to think, oh no, it's something else buried in your genes. It doesn't have anything to do with that. And the same is true for germ theory. It's always a way of getting around the fact that the causes of disease in the cell are very clear. You either have nutritional incompatibilities or deficiencies, or you have environmental exposures, non-native EMF, toxicants, radionuclides. There's an infinite number of chemicals that are carcinogenic, genotoxic, mutagenic. But that was the whole psyop. The chemical industry spawned pharma, actually. If you look at IG Farben and their focus on dyes and other chemicals, they happened to invent the original pharmaceuticals by accident. I mean, in fact, there's a lot of psychogenicity to things like artificial food colorings, coal tar food colorings. So that's why they don't use them in Europe. In the US, everyone is pretty much on default low dose psychiatrics, which is why ADHD and food coloring is so linked. But IG Farben and the chemical industry spawned pharma, which is why pharma actually uses as seed stock a lot of the petrochemicals to produce their highly toxic xenobiotics. Okay, so xenobiotic means foreign to bio, so life or the body. Pharmaceuticals, by definition, are pretty much synthetic and alien to our metabolism. They're poisons. So they're patented poisons that have certain side effects that they take the primary side effect they want, like it could be amnesiac, so they call it Ambien and they market it as like beneficial, even though it's like literally killing people. It's like a black box label now, a warning. So in other words, the whole thing was a
Crazy.
scam, right, from the beginning. So allopathy is a form of sorcery, in my opinion. It's meant to deceive, and it actually means that literally, pharmakia and pharmakos and all these ancient words in Greek. Okay, so pharmakia, there's a human sacrifice meaning there. There's also poisoner. That's literally where the word pharmaceutical comes from. And they basically deceive people into thinking they're not responsible for their health. Nothing that they feel in their body's real. Disease comes from a lack of drugs or from exposure to invisible particles. So then you need to trust the witch doctor and the white coat with these magical vaccines they inject into you, or these little magic pills, which are like the Eucharist, right? Because it's the church. It's like a little wafer that you bow down to, you're indoctrinated to. And that is basically what I have observed. Now, in my book, I don't go so poetic, mythological. I go more into the actual detailed science and history. But when you really look down the rabbit hole, you find out that the history of treating cancer and fighting the war against cancer was really just a war on the body slash the populations that at that time needed to be captured and controlled by another system that ultimately just basically deceived people into thinking that, again, illness is something that just happens to you. You have to manage it. You have to be controlled by the priesthood of the medical monotheists, and that, we are helpless fundamentally.